Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Shoemaker. I'm thrilled to be talking to everybody this morning. I'm the executive connector of Social Venture Partners in Seattle, and I'm also the founding president of Social Venture Partners International. We're a global network of philanthropists in 38 cities in 8 countries around the world. So what I'd love to talk to you guys today about is this model of engaged philanthropy, and I hope I can share some things with you that will be of value. Just a little bit about me to start with, maybe that you can relate to about where you're at in your career right now. How did I end up in this? Probably like a lot of folks, I didn't plan to, I didn't intend to. But when I look back on my life and my upbringing, there was a lot of service, a lot of volunteerism in it. My dad was a minister. My mom was always doing work in the community. I was a big part of this thing we used to have called a paper drive. Seems hard to think of in these days of recycling, but we used to go around and collect papers and then take them off to the recycling facility. So there was a lot of service and volunteerism, I think, early on in my life that had an effect. My background is undergrad accounting, got an MBA, went to work for 5 years at Nestle, 2 years at a startup that failed miserably, 6 years at Microsoft, and then in 1998 I was given the opportunity to work at SVP. There was a couple organizations, Robin Hood Foundation in New York and the Roberts Enterprise Fund in San Francisco, that existed at the time. And they were based on this idea of building capacity organizations, about being closer to the organizations that you fund, and being outcomes focused. And I think those things really resonated with us when we were thinking about the model. The piece that SVP and SV2 and some others added to that was this idea of also directly engaging the philanthropists. So we call it philanthropy development. So the idea that the donors themselves would be directly engaged, not just that you would give money to a staff that would be engaged, but you as a donor would directly be engaged in the work. I think that was sort of the innovation that we all added to the model that was emerging at that time, which at that time the phrase was venture philanthropy. It sort of evolved into engaged philanthropy. But it's the idea that you use more than your money to do good work in the community. And I think that there's some sort of universal things that people that are a part of SVP, SV2, et cetera, respond to. And at a really core level, it's pretty basic human stuff. One is that I can do more than just with my financial capital, my money. I can use my human capital, my intellectual capital, my social capital. And if you look at challenges and problems out there in the world today, I think they absolutely need more than money. Another thing is just the value of learning from each other and learning from other people. Moving into social sector work can feel really complex and really hard. So having other people to share your experiences with is really valuable. There's also just this belief in that set of core principles I described earlier in building organizations and having long-term relationships and focusing on the capacity of the organization and finding good leaders. All of those things are principles that I think people that are a part of engaged philanthropy models respond to. And lastly, just the simple idea of I can do more together than what I can do on my own. That's about as basic as it gets, but that really underlies the whole model. There's lots of things people can do on their own. That's great. But the leverage and the learning and the shared impact that you can create together is pretty much the core reason why I think people respond to engaged philanthropy giving models. So there are lots of models of engaged philanthropy out there, sort of all the way from in my neighborhood, a handful of us might decide to get together and sort of pool our money and think about a particular cause or some issue in our community and make that give together, all the way up to full-blown models like SVP and SV2 and Full Circle Fund and others like that. And I think if you sort of take the principles of the model, there's lots of different ways that you can spin the model in between really all in, fully engaged, and hey, let's put in some shared money together. Again, they all have that core principle of what can we do better together than what we could do on our own. One of the fascinating things for SVP in the last 3 years has been the way our models has expanded geographically. And not just geographically, but really across cultures and across languages. So in the last 3 years, we're now in Japan, Korea, China, India, Australia, and the UK. And those countries are part of the story, but to me, the really fascinating part of the story is those parts of the world, there's so many things that are different. Languages, cultures. When it comes to philanthropy and to giving, they don't have the same kind of donation culture that the States has. Hopefully they'll get there. They don't have this social ecosystem for nonprofits that we have as developed as we do. On the other hand, the NGOs in that part of the world, they're more readily able and ready to work with the public sector. So they're in some ways, they've got some catch up to do. In other ways, they've leapfrogged where we're at. But what's really and really cool is just how sort of universal it is. I was in Tokyo 3 months ago, and I was walking down the street with a guy that's a partner in the SVP there, and he was sort of new to this, and he described the experience of being involved in philanthropy as an opening of me. And I'm sure there's a little bit of translation to that, but I think for him what that meant was that what he said to me was, it was a sense of his mind and his heart being opened up to causes and challenges in his community in a way that he never understood, and in a way that he understood that he could have an impact. So that idea of giving back, of wanting to help your fellow person, of wanting to make a difference in the world, that cuts across cultures and geographies, and it's really, really inspiring. So we live in this world when we're so bombarded with messages about how everything is different, and some things are, and we want to acknowledge and relish that, and yet there are some things that make us common as human beings. And I think that giving back in philanthropy is one of the best possible ways where that shows up. If you look at the world we live in today in 2014, social media, the connectedness of our world, the degree to which technology has advanced, how globalized this whole world is, the model of connected, engaged, networked philanthropy, it fits even better today than it did 15 years ago. So I think the opportunities for it, and for us, that spread of it into other cultures and geographies is probably a manifestation of that. The opportunity for engaged philanthropy, for collective philanthropy is as great or greater today than it ever has been. And I think that potential is really huge. And you hear a lot about the idea of collective impact and how do we create broad-scale change in communities now. It's going to take people from the private sector. It's going to take the nonprofit sector. It's going to take the public sector. And they're going to have to figure out how to work together. And they're going to need people that have been through things like collective giving experiences, collaborative giving environments. The people that have done that kind of work together, like in SVP and SV2, they're going to be the ones that can be a part of these larger community change cross-sector efforts. So again, I don't think we started out doing it this way in 1998 because we thought that would be one of the purposes of our model. But I can see now that the kinds of people that come through SVP are going to be the kinds of people that are going to be involved in these larger community change movements. And that's really, really powerful. And I think that what it also says is, and I'm sort of speaking more for the states here, there's a lot of solutions to social problems out there, way more than people know. So I think there's a lot of problems we know how to solve. And in a lot of cases, there's a fair amount of money out there. Money always helps, but I don't think the biggest challenge is having solutions or having money. The biggest challenge is human capital. And if you take your human potential and what you learn from this, and especially then when you connect it to other networks of like-minded people, the leverage and the impact that you can have has never, ever been greater. And that should be very inspiring to you. And whatever reason you took this course, you were right in the first place. And what you're going to be able to do with what you learned in this will be far greater today than it ever has been before.